Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic show. It's episode 555. It's our last interview before our Christmas break. We've got a great friend of the show, a great WordPress contributor, and just a great guy in general. We have the wizard, JJ, with us, the founding developer of bbPress, joint presenter of WordPress Weekly. Just a great guy in general. Would you like to also introduce yourself as well quickly in about 20 seconds?
You know, Jonathan, for a moment there, I thought you were talking about Stephen.
Well, he's great. He's great as well. He's great.
I haven't hit wizard level yet.
But he's not a wizard.
I guess, I suppose. I'm just happy to be here. Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of stuff for a long time. So just happy to hang out with you guys. It'll be fun.
Oh, great. And I've got my great co-host, a wizard in training, Stephen Saunders. Stephen, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, Stephen Sauer from zipfish.io. You could run a speed test there, check out how fast we can make your website.
That's great. And before we go, what we're basically going to be talking about is they're going to be talking about the future of bbPress, what JJ thinks of BuddyPress, and just a small subject, the future GPL software. So only a few topics to discuss in half an hour, plus some 15 minutes bonus content. But before we go into this great and should be interesting interview, I just want to mention one of our great sponsors, and that's Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta Hosting is only a WordPress hosting provider, a premier one. If you've got a WooCommerce site, a learning management system, a membership site that needs some oomph, as I say, you should go and have a look at what Kinsta has to offer, not only for yourself but for your clients. Basically, they provide all the modern technology on Google Cloud, superb interface, all the technology bells and whistles, and great support. So if that sounds interesting, and it should at a reasonable price, go over to Kinsta, have a look at their plans. I suggest you should buy one for yourself or for your clients. And the main thing, if you do that, is to tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So straight into the interview. So where should I start, Wizard? So let's start with their bbPress. You know, are you still actively involved in that? And if yes, where do you think you will be at the end of 2021 with it?
So bbPress has always been an interesting piece of software in the WordPress world of things, because it does power a lot. A lot of people use it, and a lot of people rely on it for the support forums, not just like for the plugins forums or the general WordPress.org support forums, but the Rosetta forums. It's translated into all the different languages that WordPress is translated into, bbPress gets translated into. But it is, even though it is like a critical piece of infrastructure, it is, there's a very small group of people that get to decide what happens in it. And so the nice thing is that it is very simple for the most part. And so it is generally like feature complete, which is kind of an odd thing to think of when you think of software, that there's not much else that really has to go into bbPress to make it be what it is. And so it's not to say that it's, you know, it's just kind of idling, right? Like it's sort of in its maintenance mode, because it not because it's end of life in any way, but because there's not much else to add to it that WordPress.org needs, or that forums in general really need. And so it is one of those things where like the site could use a refresh, and maybe some of the default styling could use an update, and those things here and there will always happen. But those are largely maintenance items. We've got subscriptions, profiles, favorites, forums, topics, replies, moderation tools that, you know, continue to get improved here and there. But there are no major features planned for bbPress, other than like some Gutenberg block support that's currently being worked on. But again, it's like those are nice to haves. They're not major features for bbPress. They're just keeping up with WordPress. So it's that's what makes it a fun project to work on, in my opinion. It's still like it might not be a huge amount of activity and a ton of work going into it like something like Gutenberg, but for folks that are looking to contribute, get an easy badge on their WordPress.org profile. There's a thousand dumb little things, typos that I've got in there from years ago, or weird class names that people could add to stuff. There's like a million little ways that it can just get iterated on and improved over time that like make it an easy piece of software to contribute to for folks that, you know, might be intimidated by stepping up to Gutenberg or WordPress core itself.
So you say that, but what's your thoughts about BuddyPress? Because they're, you know, they've taken. He's grinning. They're you know, they've taken, you know, which they've got every right to do so because you know, because it's GPL software, and they've done a styling job on it and added maybe some additional functionality, and they seem to be doing quite well. So what's your feelings about what they've been up to?
So I think, well, a lot of people expect for my feelings to probably be something that they aren't. I mean, I am only happy for like the folks at BuddyBoss. Mike and Tom, who I've met several times at WordCamp Miami and other WordCamps throughout the years. They've always shown me in person or remotely, like, here's the cool stuff that we are doing. So it's not like it came as a surprise. They are pillars in the BuddyPress community because they've always tried to build like the best possible experience using BuddyPress that they could. And so they are exercising their right with the GPL to fork it and take it and do what they want with it. While at the same time, they are kind of doing what is the most successful open source business model, and they are wholesale taking BuddyPress, packaging it with their own software on top of it, making it really pretty, and then giving users the experience that they want with it. So
before I throw it over to Stephen, I remember from our last conversation that you said, would it, if you had the, because obviously you got to pay for your living, but you said, you know, if you had the resources, financial and time resources, what they are doing, was that what you would have liked to have done in some way?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it is like every time that we talk about any type of website, social network in a box kind of experience, for the most part, it's not usually very pleasant. It's not usually something that we look forward to using. Twitter has somehow kind of floated by. It's like kind of being okay enough to use, but there's a huge amount of opportunity in just being able to roll your own community and websites and communities like Reddit, or sort of largely group-ish kind of based following apps like Twitch or Snapchat, things like that have sort of proved that like having your community sort of hovering around you and one focal point works, and it is sort of what people want out of it. There's just such a great opportunity to do that in an open and free kind of way, and without dedicated energy kind of focused on it, it doesn't get better. And so the BuddyBoss folks put the energy towards it for years. They've put time and effort into making BuddyBoss be that good experience, and so they deserve all the success in the world, because it was one of those things that I couldn't do at the same time, and wasn't built for. I don't have the experience to execute that myself, and so they did, and it is, and the best part is really it is like whether or not there's like direct communication from the BuddyBoss folks or the BuddyPress project, I think is kind of irrelevant. Like whatever they do will only help BuddyPress in the long run. and whatever BuddyPress does will only help the BuddyBoss folks in the long run. So it is very sort of symbiotic, and that's the beauty of forking or going your own direction. Is whatever they do is derivative in GPL. And so if it's something that's amazing and they've made great strides towards something, BuddyPress can always absorb it and bring it back in. It is the ideal situation. I think it is the GPL at work in sort of the best possible way, I think.
All right, over to you, Stephen.
I think it's really interesting when you're talking about like that symbiotic relationship in the GPL world, where you have something that was built and then somebody that takes it, packages it, monetizes it. How does that work? Or I guess, how would you, in your mind, frame up like the best kind of way to make that symbiotic relationship work, where you have BuddyPress and then you have BuddyBoss, right? So BuddyBoss implements features into their fork and stuff. Do you think there is onus on that person who's forked it and is like creating new features and stuff to be trying to like contribute and commit those features back? Or is it up for the person who's controlling that main branch to be looking at what's going on in the fork and deciding what they want to pull in?
Right. I mean, it is like the open source, that is the friction point for every project, right? If you look at WebKit or any other popular the Ubuntu or whatever other popular distro that you want to think of, that I think it sort of depends on the team and the people, and it ends up depending on the feature also, and so the size of it or the magnitude or the shift that comes as a result of it. Like, and the most important part is to try and remember that everyone is just focusing on what they can focus on and trying their best to get the job done. And it's just too easy to think that it's personal or to think that someone's the bad guy. I could very easily be perceived as like, I should be paying attention to them and pulling things down that they're working on that are cool. And like, the BuddyPress contributors could very easily feel like it's their responsibility to tell us what it is that they're working on and then to pitch us those ideas. But then we've all seen, I think, like where that goes wrong, where they continue to pitch the cool stuff that they're doing, but they fail to get an audience of people excited about it on the open source side. And so then they're doing all this extra work to show everyone what they're working on, and then no one's really paying attention or appreciating that. So it falls apart really, really fast. And like the only reason it falls apart is because we can only pay attention to so many things, and the software like BuddyPress or WordPress and bbPress, they're as simple as they are on the surface, they are complex under the hood. And so front loading all that in your brain is just not something that 1 or 2 or 5 people are able to do anymore. And so if someone wanted to, or BuddyBoss wanted to, contribute their media managing component, because we have BuddyPress attachments, but if they want to say, hey, we've really nailed this media experience, we want to contribute this upstream into the BuddyPress proper, how do we actually review and contribute and roadmap and scope and put that on a release cycle? Like, it only slows them down, frankly, and it only frustrates them to try and loop us into all of this other, like, it ends up being really frustrating, I think, for everyone. Yeah. And so I don't know that anyone's really nailed it, at least that I've seen. Maybe somebody has. Google and Apple working on WebKit, I think, is like a solid example of like Apple working on a project and being open source but kind of closed and having a little bit of a walled garden, but still inheriting features that everybody needs in a browser. Like they've nailed it because we're all using it all the time. But it's tough, man. Like I don't know that there's a perfect experience for that. Have you seen anything? Do you know of anything? Can you think of?
No, I mean that's why I was just wondering what your like perception of that was, because like
usually
to me like that's the rub,
usually
right?
What happens is somebody forks and then the original one dies, right? Like Jigo Shop and WooCommerce or WordPress and B2 or Nextcloud and OwnCloud were recently like there's like I forked Chosen. So there's jQuery Chosen was like a drop down that like select two, and the folks at Harvest originally created this JavaScript jQuery based drop down, and it had been on GitHub without any pull requests or anything merged or any activity from the owners for 7 years. I was like, I really like it. And there's like 50 pull requests that haven't been merged. Okay, and I don't really know enough about the history of the project, but I really like the way that it works, and I like the way that it looks, and I'm just a fan of it, so I forked it. And like literally nobody said anything. Like I don't know that anyone's noticed that I like spent a couple of days like merging through a bunch of PRs and forked it. It has its own site on github.io, but I haven't renamed it because I feel like they abandoned it and it has a following. And so what good does renaming it do if nobody cares that I did it? So maybe when they're like, hey, John, this is not yours to keep named this way, you need to rename it. Then I'll rename it. The name doesn't, I'm not attached to it one way or the other. But like the only reason I forked it is because they weren't working on it anymore. And like that's the same with WordPress in V2, but it is different when someone forks an active project. Like, this is active. Like BuddyPress is getting worked on. Maybe not to the pace that they're comfortable with or happy with, but it is actively developed. So to fork it, and it is interesting, but it is only good. It is only healthy for like all of BuddyPress's and BuddyBoss's users, for there to be another group of people that pull it in and put their polish on it. Like that's exactly what you want from an open source project. It's only good.
We're going to go for a break. We're coming back. We've got JJ. I was really looking forward to this interview. I think it started off well. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. JJ's been doing his wizardy in the break. The wizard. So, you know, what do you sense of GPL software in general? Because I noticed on our panel show, we had an article, it's either last week or the week before that, and it was looking at market share, and obviously WordPress still seems to be growing, but other well-known web platforms like Joomla and Drupal seem to be in a decline by the report we were looking at, where things like Shopify and some other non-GPL software platforms seem to be growing. So how do you sense things? Do you think, apart from WordPress, a lot of GPL are in a slight decline?
Well, I think the number that it is, and it's like it's not. It doesn't make me happy to think that is the case. And I think my personal outlook on it is a little bit more doom and gloom than most people probably want to hear. But I am happy to share it.
Yeah, and you know, I'm English, so I'm used to gloom and doom. So, you know, a declining empire that no longer exists. We're leaving the common market. That's a really bright idea. So I'm used to gloom. So off you go, JJ.
Well, so like, even though the world of computing is generally hoisted up by open source software, right? And by millions of contributors to millions of everything from tiny to monolithic packages of open source software. We all that in the industry understand that. But it's like a very human thing to sort of overestimate your importance in the world, I guess. It's like the GPL as a license is only one of many, and open source software, as important as it is what enables other people to build off of what we think and what we do. We're all just kind of ants abstracting little pieces of it, and improving it and building it up, over the course of dozens of years to have computing be at a point where it is today. And so, like, it's not surprising that fewer websites are going up, or that fewer CMSs are powering things with open source software, because frankly, open source without anything else on top of it is like white rice, right? Like it is great for what it is. It is a perfect foundation for a million different things, but people only really like it usually when you've added something to it. And so, like, WordPress by itself is great. bbPress by itself, BuddyPress by itself, they are all great, but they need something else on top of it. So, like, it's the experience that you build, or that gets built on top of the open source software, that needs to be the best, and it's not usually the best. And so then when your choice is, do I want white rice, with a little cheese sprinkled on it, or do I want to get like amazing Indian food someplace else for kind of the same price? What do you pick, right? Like, you go for the better experience, you go for the better flavor. And when it's a tough competition. If we're competing against, if by we I mean, like, if WordPress or open source or the GPL or that part of it is directly competing with a closed source platform like Shopify or Squarespace or something else, like, we will always be behind, always. And that either is you accept it and you know it and you're okay with it, and it energizes you and it empowers you and it makes you feel like you want to build towards something better, or you look at the numbers and you see it declining and you think that that's bad or it's negative. But I think it's completely anticipated that it will eventually, when you're measuring those numbers, that's just kind of going to be actively what happens. And, like, the part of it that is the most scary to me, I guess, is, like, the future generations are simply not using the web like we do, like adults do. Like, younger generations are engaging with each other through video game platforms that are specific to that video game, with Minecraft or Fortnite or anything else. They're building their version of collaboration is with each other on Twitch or on YouTube. They are not trying to contribute to mom and dad software, right? Like, they're not captivated by publishing to the web the way that we were. We grew up in an era where publishing to the web was like the most amazing experience you could have with a computer. And they have something that is like the culmination of all forms of media: TV, video, movie, the web, programming, interaction, all rolled into one. And they're not rolling websites the way that we did. They're not building websites the way that we did. And so, like, I don't know that that open source is necessarily competing with closed source as much as, like, bigger, better, more captivating experiences completely, other than just a website that is a web page, then a header and a content area and a footer and a sidebar. Like, kids have found something way cooler, and they're not going to be building something with WordPress because it's not what they grew up with. It's not how they work. It's not how they contribute to their own communities. The way that they build things and contribute is through the communities that they've built through the software that they engage with each other in. So, like, if there was an open source video codec or an open source commenting system that Twitch and YouTube and everyone could sort of build something off of, would be different. But they're all rolling their own because they're not that complex anymore. It's sort of a solved problem for them. The bigger problems are network data transfer and CDNs all over the place, and like the title, content, blocks, comments. That's easy for them. Solve that in a weekend. But with WordPress, we sort of fine tune it and obsess over it for 10 years, but it's not a powerful enough piece of software to power all of Twitch, right? So it's not their choice. And so the reason that I think it's sort of doom and gloom is that it is sort of, we are like WordPress, you know, the web, feel like is a little bit destined to be a card catalog in a library. It's like it will eventually 20, 30 years from now, it'll be a legacy system that we all love and enjoy and adore and continue to want to work on and improve. But like the HTTP part of it, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript part of it, I don't know that we will be engaging with a website any more than we engage with an AOL keyword, frankly.
No, that's totally. Oh, that was a bit gloomy there, folks. We're all doomed. We're doomed.
Holidays.
We're doomed. Well, actually, I don't know what's happened to the half hour, but we're getting close to it. But JJ's agreed to stay on for another 15 minutes, which you'll be able to watch on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch the bonus plus our interview for the podcast all in one. So JJ, what's the best way for people to find out more about you and what you're up to?
I blog like a regular old blogger at jjj.blog. And if you want to see the piece of software that I've generally been spending a lot of time working on lately, you can check out Sugar Calendar, one of the sort of pieces of software that we have of our primary projects over at Sandhills Development, sugarcalendar.com. Calendar software is fun. It's spent my brain in a lot of different ways.
Well, we have to discuss that in the bonus content, see what you're up to there as well.
We can talk about that there for sure.
So Stephen's been helping us with the WP-Tonic website to make it faster and a couple other website properties that I own, and he's been doing a fantastic job. So I recommend that you go over to Stephen and try out his speed optimization service. So over to you, Stephen. How can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, and see how much faster your site can be.
That's great. And like I say, this is going to be the last show, interview show before Christmas. I just want to wish you and your family a great Christmas and a really happy New Year. Let's hope that 2021 is a bit more of a happier year than 2020. It won't take much, will it, listeners and viewers? Let's be frank about it. But I do wish you and your family a safe and healthy Christmas. You probably are going to stay at home. I would probably advise you to do that, but I do wish that for yourself. And thank you so much for your support of the WP-Tonic show and being a loyal audience. It is much appreciated. We'll see you in the new year, folks. Bye. So, JJ, Sugar Calendar. Tell us more about this, because it's to be honest, it's off the quiver of software products that Pippin and his crew, which you're a member of, one of the best coding shops around, I would imagine. It's not really, it's not been given a lot of love, really, maybe. That's why you've probably been put in charge of it, to zump it up a bit, you know. So what you've been up to with it?
It is funny how that works, right? I do have a track record of finding the cute little piece of software, trying to hoist it up a little bit, I guess. But I really like the challenge of, I guess it ends up sort of being minimalism, but it's like finding the simplest way, especially with WordPress, because it is just sort of what I know in my like adult career, of like really nailing the best experience that you can for sort of a unique piece of software inside of WordPress itself. Like I grew up with forums when I was a kid, so that's why bbPress was always an attractive project. Or an idea was, getting forums really tightly integrated into WordPress was sort of in the heyday of like everyone wants custom post types and taxonomies and very sort of simple data structures, and bbPress is a little bit different than that, and BuddyPress was way different than that. And now WooCommerce clearly is way different, right? And so the idea of kind of building applications inside of WordPress as an application is just what I thought was kind of fun and felt like a big challenge. And so like my like 10-year vision, if I'm going to keep working in WordPress and keep whittling away at WordPress related things, and I hope that that's the case, and I hope that my doom and gloom is wrong, and I hope that it continues to be awesome.
No, I wouldn't say it was doom and gloom. I wouldn't actually say it was doom and gloom. To me, it's just evolution in a way. Right. I think the biggest threat to most visual interfaces, to some extent, and we've already seen that, is voice search, voice command. Obviously, it's moved on a great deal. I have dyslexia myself, so having the possibility of having true software that can truly work with your voice is very appealing. But we have moved on, but it's still not quite there, to some extent. Right. But in some ways, I see that as the kind of nearest real threat to a kind of visual usage of the web, is that you do search by words, you command machines to do things by natural language, don't you?
Yep. And I mean, we're lucky that the web is sort of built using the tech that it is, because it is a good protocol. The DNS system and the HTTP system they're good protocols to build services and stuff on top of. Like, so it isn't that the web is just going to die this like sad sort of death, but
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the other thing that comes to mind is, when the iPhone came out, which funny enough couldn't run apps at the time, Steve Jobs kind of pushed, we had I forgot what he called it, the apps that they run on a browser.
Web apps.
And then that's what he called them, web apps, wasn't it? And then came apps, and when that first broke out, almost everybody was, no, I don't need a website, I want an app, but that's died down to some extent, and I think it will die down a little bit more probably in the 2021, because it's very hard to get your app. You've only got a small screen, and most people, they might have a load of apps on their iPhone or Android, but most of them they don't use. So the reality of it's just died down to, that's my opinion. I don't know what your opinion is.
Well, the native always wins is the problem. And like, you want a native iOS app, you want a native Android app, you want a native Mac OS app. And like, the web is native to nothing. It's native to itself. And so it's not like WordPress is the very obvious native piece of software for a website. It could be anything. And so it is WordPress is sort of an interesting piece of middleware. You have the opportunity or the choice to find it, but you don't have to use it. So, but like there's a really cool open source, I think it's MIT licensed piece of software that you can find on GitHub that is very underappreciated for as awesome as it is for building web apps. and it is called Framework 7. And I have talked about it. I've mentioned it at least a couple of times throughout different conversations I've had with people. But like, if you want to build a web app, you probably want to use Framework 7, even though it's like doesn't have as many likes or as many followers on GitHub or whatever. But like, it looks perfect. Like, it looks like an iOS app. Like, it feels right. Like, everything is right. And the developer, I forget his full name, Vladimir something, Russian dude, is super awesome. Has a Android material theme on it. It auto switches between one or the other, so you can just write one app and it'll sort of be cross-platform on the web. And it is so underappreciated in terms of just like, if you want to build a thing that looks like an app, but you don't know Swift or you don't know C, and but you know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you want an app, you just pick it up, plunk all the things in the places, like easier than Bootstrap, and you've built an app. And it looks, if you showed it to someone and put it in their hand and said, check out this app I built, they would not know is any different than a native app. And so it is still very possible to build web apps that look and feel right. If that happens to be the environment you work in and the languages that you understand, there is software out there that will help you build a really good web app that will be completely passable for a native app. And like, I guess, back to Sugar Calendar, like that's sort of one of the things that is its strongest point. Is there are a ton of calendar plugins for WordPress, and Sugar Calendar is a small following relative to a lot of the major players that are there, but its strength is in it being native to WordPress, it feeling native, like a calendar that you would want in a WordPress. Like, if you like WordPress and you like WP-Admin and you're used to navigating its UI, it is a calendar software in your WordPress. And so, like, that is sort of the one of the fundamental kind of things that WordPress is missing out on, is we don't have Office software in it. Like, it sounds kind of silly, but we don't have notes or reminders or calendar or any of the things that like would actually allow you to own your own like experience when it comes to your email or your reminders or your notes or your to-dos or your calendar. And like I like using macOS's calendar and its reminders and everything else, and my family and I share all stuff all across it, and it's very pleasant and pretty experience. But it doesn't. It doesn't live on my server. It doesn't live in my WordPress. It's not my data, and I would like to eventually have a place where my blog lets me have all of my reminders and my to-dos and my calendars and my notes in my WordPress. And like, it's all just databases. It's all just the server. It's all just a computer. It's not really any different. But even though you trust Apple as a company or you don't, like, eventually it should be easy enough to have it on your own server. If it's on a Raspberry Pi in your basement or a Linode or Kinsta or anything else, like, it just should be easier to go, okay, well, let's just connect these two things together and just move the data over. Like, and it's not. There's nothing. And that bums me out. Like, it should be pretty easy. And so that's sort of the goal with Sugar Calendar, is like, as a company for Sandhills, we want to be able to have a central paid time off calendar, a central vacation calendar, want to have a calendar for releases. So when piece of software goes out, we hook into it from GitHub webhooks, and it publishes an event in our release calendars. So we have a central calendar of everyone who pushes software from GitHub. Like, little things that you should be able to plug into a calendar that like you can't really do easily with a Google Calendar, because everyone has to have access to it. Everyone's got to have some kind of feed to it. And normally you're pulling that into your phone, which means you have to have it all synchronized between everybody's stuff. And so like, why not build some of the tools that we want and Sugar Calendar being, Pippin's original simple calendar. We thought let's put a couple of years worth of effort and energy towards it and see what kind of calendar we can build. And it's pretty cool. So the 2.1 release, we added time zone support to, and it is probably, like, aside from advanced recurring, is probably like the second most bizarre and complicated piece of software I think I've ever written.
Wow.
Like figuring out how time zones sort of relate and diff from one another, where, like, you have an event that's happening in Chicago, but you live in Los Angeles, and you've got to figure out the time difference. And knowing that, like, daylight savings time is a thing, knowing that states like Arizona the counties in Arizona don't always have daylight savings time. And sort of it all is very relative to, like, some very specific point in time. So all of your math and your offsets are always unique. And so how do you show someone a calendar where, like I need to know when I leave Chicago on an airplane at 3 p.m. and I arrive at New York at JFK, that there's an hour difference, but it's a 3-hour flight. So what time do I land? It sounds really simple, but because one airport could be recognizing daylight savings time and the other one couldn't be, sometimes it's 2 hours and sometimes it's 3. So, like, it's all these little things where you're like, oh, like, it makes total sense why no one has really nailed this in, like, a very good experience, because it is just convoluted. And so that was what I spent most of my past 6 months building, was like a bunch of time zone support into Sugar Calendar. And so then we have calendar feeds that pull in feeds for calendars that have all the time zone data and stuff in it correctly. And once you look at the code, it does not look interesting or fascinating or anything at all. But getting it there was an engineering, and, like, companies like Google and Apple have the calendar software has existed since before all of us, right? So it's not like I have built or done anything that a bunch of people have already done before. But there's a reason why WordPress doesn't really show you times. You've got the date that things were posted, you've got the date in the permalink, but there's a reason why it doesn't really mess with times very much, because it's just complicated stuff.
Yeah. Over to you, Stephen.
Yeah, look, dates, times, calendar stuff, because, like, you're dealing with, like, 3 different relative places, like 2 geographically and 1, like, what is the date, right? So 3 relative things that you're trying to calculate at any given time. It's just kind of a nightmare. A couple of years ago, I was trying to write a piece of subscription software, and that was just dealing with, like, when do subscriptions roll over on a monthly basis? Is it calculated by day? Is it calculated by month? How do we want to position it? And so, like that, like, that's a whole, like, kind of brain thing to go to. But when you get to, like, actual date and time stuff, like, that's next level.
It's crazy. And, like, WordPress saves everything in UTC for the most part, but then you have the posts, like, you have post date and post date GMT, and it makes sense. Like, I know now, literally, I know for a fact why those database columns are like that, and I know that everyone hates them, but, like, if you need to make a database query for the actual offset, there is, like, MySQL doesn't give you an offset. You don't have, like, you have a date time column type. You could have a timestamp column, but there's no time zone. You have no offset. So if you need to say, like, I need these events, but this is my offset, I live in this region and I need to get events according to this, you need that offset column. And
so why do you keep working on this? Like, going back to JJ's, we'll call it the JJ doom and gloom analysis, right? Yeah, like, you're still really excited about it. You're still putting time and energy and, like, a lot of brain power in how to solve these problems.
Right.
What, like, how do you resolve that tension?
It is an internal piece of conflict, right? But, like, so Sandhills as a company has values and that are that are in alignment with the way that I feel and think about like software and employment and just I think that like the company that we are building is a good one and like really one of the best ones, frankly. And like and we're trying to build more of a sustainable future than I guess we are like really caring about WordPress software. And so the software is successful, it is profitable, it is fun, and like the people that I work with are great. And so like there is like it is just rewarding to work on, and that is enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But you are right that like would it be smarter, right, to go and like we all go and work at Twitch, right? Because that's the future of everything is live streaming stuff on a place like Twitch, right? Like
at least right now.
well, right, but like when I in like 2008, 9, and 10, when WordPress was really taking off and spending a lot of time going back and forth to San Francisco or New York or going down to South by Southwest and like really being in the thick of it. And like when I made the decision to like, I'm going to move back to Wisconsin, everyone's like, why are you moving back to Wisconsin? Like, why are you not like just move to the Bay and get a sweet job and go and like, I think the future of work is always working where you're comfortable and where you want to be. And so would I have enjoyed it? Sure. Would it have been fun? I'm sure. But like, I believe that I should be able to do that same work wherever I want to be. And so that was the decision that I made, and I'm happy that it worked out that way. But like, it's kind of weird seeing the end of the runway and not knowing if you're taking off or if you're just teetering off of it. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah, to kind of finish off the interview. So, do you miss WordPress Weekly? Do you miss the old?
I miss Jeffro and having a platform over there, of course. I mean, we run over time every time I'm on the show, right, Jonathan? So obviously, I don't mind shooting the breeze with y'all. So yeah, of course I do. But I'm not a good host like you are, or like Jeffro is. Y'all know how to host a show. I'd love to have my own show, but I don't know how to host a podcast. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I'm happy to just be a guest.
So how is Jeffro? What do you know what he's doing now?
He is focusing on himself, which I think is probably the lesson that all of us could learn from Jeffro is to spend some time having some me time and figuring stuff out for himself. And so he is happy and healthy and doing well and all those things, but he's enjoying some disconnection. I think he still tweets every once in a while. You can still see him some vent out some steam here and there, but
he's kept a low profile. Was you surprised that they decided to kind of, I don't know what the official situation of the podcast is. Is at some time it might be generated, but it's in kind of suspension. Was you surprised that it was decided not to continue with it?
No, I mean if I know Justin's not real. It's not his thing, and Sarah's not really into it either, and so no, I'm not surprised. It is the end of an era, right? But I'm not surprised. And like I said, I was never even remotely under the impression that like if Jeff Rowe left, that somehow I would still be involved in a podcast over there. It's never even. It's the show goes with Jeff, in my opinion. If Jeff started a new thing, I think that there'd be he'd have a huge audience of people that like how he says and how he thinks, and it would be. I think it would still be successful with just Jeff. But I enjoy hanging out and shooting the breeze, and so I'm happy to share whatever little bit I can, just trying to be helpful. That's why the doom and gloom stuff kind of bothers me, Stephen. Like, I don't want it to be negative, but I don't know what the right solution is. I don't know what we do. I don't know what.
I think there's a good thing. I think there's a good thing that comes out of that. It's like this realization that the world is going to change, and as long as you know that's happening, and then I feel like it frees you to work on the thing that you think is interesting for the sake of that is interesting. Like, you don't have to be like trying to be the latest and greatest and keep up, because like there's no way you can do that for your entire life. So the faster you get to the point of like, hey, the world's going to change, the world's going to do what the world's going to do, but if I can sit in my little corner and work on something that I think is insanely interesting.
I'm using my horses and my buddy whip on those newfangled things called cars. I don't trust something that hasn't got a spirit in it. There we go.
Well, it is possible though, right? Like, I mean, I can't be alone. I'm not the only one seeing it. We might be alone, published into our blogs in our own little blogging network, and all of our kids and grandkids are going to be like, "Grandpa's using the internet again." Like it's a thing
certainly
that,
possible. I think
we'll be having fun doing it.
Yeah, there we go.
Totally. Of course we will.
Well, I think you have to come back in the new year, because I think we just scratched the surface. It's amazing how almost 50 minutes goes, because, just to finish off really, basically some technologies kind of, they have their heyday, but then they keep their relevance to some example, radio. Radio, its heyday was the 20s and 30s. But still, as a important media platform, it's still there, isn't it? To some degree, podcasting has its style and tradition from radio. The same thing about film. It seems a bit more threatened that that the tradition of going to a theatre, a film theatre, because of the virus and because of online streaming. I personally believe that it will always still be there to some extent, because it's the event, to go, it might contract and be more focused on a more smaller audience, just like opera or ballet, But some things change, get smaller, some things just die, don't they? So it will be just interesting to see what happens to the web. Right, JJ, it's been a great discussion. Thank you. You have to come back in the new year. We're going to wrap it up now, folks, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.